Hello, and thank you so much for joining us. Those that are coming back and joining us for the first time, welcome to Verge and Bloom. We are so happy to have you back with us today. I am James Ball, the Director of Buildings with Green Biz, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Dylan.
Hi, I'm Dylan Siegler. I'm SVP of Sustainability here at Green Biz Group.
Dylan, we're about to get into the keynotes. A lot to cover, and I saw perhaps you might be joining us on stage later for the keynotes?
Yours truly. Yes, I will be interviewing two really fabulous youth activists, Shia Bastida and Jerome Foster III. We're going to be talking about the role of activists in the climate transition and how we can kind of collaborate and communicate better to make sure that we're not actually standing in a circle shooting at each other.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Give me another highlight. What else are you looking forward to hearing or learning about today?
I cannot wait to hear Catherine Scott from the DOE. So she's going to be here talking about industrial decarbonization. And we typically put industrial decarb of something like steel, cement, sometimes ag gets put in this bucket, petrochemicals, into this bucket of hard to abate.
Yeah.
So these are the things that we're considering to be a huge challenge. And Catherine actually has a challenge for us to rethink the way that we are conceptualizing the hard to abate sectors. So really excited to hear her talk.
Well, like yesterday, we're not shying away from the difficult conversations, right? Let's go straight to the hard to abate and figure out what we can do from there. You know, for me, we're going to be introduced to the emerging leaders today. And this next generation that's coming to help lead the next movement, and really it's the people I feel I'm also learning from, right? What this new generation brings to this effort are things that I wasn't raised with, and we benefit from embracing their leadership as soon as possible in this movement. And they come from some incredibly diverse backgrounds. I've met some of our emerging leaders in the past, and they just never fail to inspire me. So I'm really excited to meet them.
Totally agree. Emerging Leaders is far and away, from my perspective, the best, most exciting thing we do at Green Biz, and that includes even the things that I do. And Brian Lewis just does a fabulous job leading that program. I was walking down the street last night here in San Jose, and I ran into them all, the entire cohort of emerging leaders heading to dinner. And so I got to connect very briefly with a few of them, and I cannot wait to seek them out today and have some more real conversations. I talked to Kevin, one of our emerging leaders. He's with the Port of Houston, and he let me know about some work that they're doing with the federal government to really decarbonize what they do there, which is fabulous. So, and that was just in like the 30 seconds that I had walking down the street.
Yeah, well, a lot more of that to come. You know, I have to say also, Molly Kawahata is going to be speaking about the science and power of hope. Same thread of conversation for me, right? I mean, we know that humans aren't really greatly motivated by a slap on the wrist, right? We want to be inspired. We're emotional creatures, right? We do a lot of time talking about the analytical frameworks for this movement and the work that needs to happen, but to really get motivated and to move us forward in a way that opens us up to the future that's positive, right? I don't know. For me, I'm passionate about that idea of hope, the idea of an inspiring vision for the future. So I'm really just interested to hear from Molly, her perspective on that and this idea of the science behind it. I think could be really compelling. So I'm interested to hear what she has to say.
That's awesome. After the roller coaster of hope and despair of yesterday, I could really use some tools and skills to stay at the top of that roller coaster rather than at the bottom.
Yes,
So
yes.
I like to think about hope and despair as kind of a rubber band between your hands, and that tension is really important. You got to keep it, but you have to be able to hold both, or you'll either snap or let slack that hope and despair rubber band.
Interesting. Another one I've heard, that our movement can be equal parts outrage and love.
Ooh.
But it's similar, this tension between like what we bring to this movement and what we're trying to accomplish.
I think that Verge is a really amazing embodiment with more than 5,000 of us here embracing that exact tension and being here together to figure out what we're going to do to get past it.
Yeah, and again, all of you joining us, tuning into the live stream, thank you for being a part of that with us. We're so grateful to have you be a part of this. Spread the word, and stay tuned, because after the keynotes today, we will be back here at Sidebar. Dylan and I, see you then.
Welcome Green Biz CEO Eric Farrow to the stage.
Good morning, Verge. Got to start by a quick shout out to the Jazz Mafia. Give it up to the Jazz Mafia. How great are they? It's so great to be back here. It's so fun for me to see so many old friends and meet so many new people. And speaking of new people, I'd love for anybody who's new this year to indulge me and please stand up. All the new people, please stand up. Wow. That's indicative of how fast this is moving. So I say to all of you, you're all new, welcome home. It's great to have you here. I came to Green Biz 13 years ago, really wanting to apply all that I had learned in tech about disruption and how disruption works, and how large-scale events, when you bring together an ecosystem, are really one of the galvanizing things that happens. And so to have 5,000 of you here this week is really extraordinary. It's been an incredible ride. My two partners, Pete May and Joel McHower, have been incredible to work with. The team has grown incredibly over the years. We started as 8, and they've just done an amazing job. So please give another shout out to our Green Biz team, which are here. Amazing job. So I'm going to take it up for a second. What we do, Green Biz empowers professional communities to confront the climate crisis. And we view this through 5 markets. And the first one, our core, and this is a Venn diagram essentially. Corporate sustainability is where we grew out of. We launched into the climate tech space, even though it wasn't called that, 11 years ago with Verge. And we launched circularity with a circular economy focus. Sustainable finance, we have an event called Greenfin, and then you've probably seen here with nature, we launched Bloom, very exciting. And so we think about this as a flywheel. We have 3 lines of business, and I just talked about the events. For each of those categories, we have the leading industry event. And then we have digital media, where we have the leading newsletters. We have some exciting things we're going to be rolling out next year about that, and we're building an amazing new team to do that. And then we also have a peer network that John Davies launched, who's sitting up here 15 years ago. Started out focusing just as an individual sustainability team membership, and we've just expanded that to add all these vertical networks within one big network. We have about 130 customers, and we've got nature, we've got transport, we've got Europe. We're going to be expanding into things like carbon, very exciting. But one of the things I'm the most excited about is actually our Emerging Leaders program. And I'm going to bring onto the stage Brian. Let's see, Brian, are you back here? Brian Lewis.
Hey, come on.
Look at how good he looks. God damn. Okay, so, that's not a jumpsuit, but still. So, this is the time you get your phone out. There's a QR code there. Scan the QR code, because tonight at the Rise Up party, we have 3 cool things that we're auctioning off at the silent auction. We have a VIP tour of a Tesla factory with a free Tesla for the weekend. We have 2 trips to Phoenix, airfare plus hotel, 2 beautiful hotels. And we've had the After Dark party for 11 years, that we've been running Verge, and it's a celebration of all of you. It's a celebration of us. It's a celebration of the work that we do, and it's always been great. But this year I'm super excited because we want to take it to the next level and help raise money for Brian's great group of people and the great work that he's doing. So it's going to be a great party. Brian, what are you excited about?
Oh man, I'm really excited about obviously the celebration of diversity and opportunity to get connected with people in a fun atmosphere. But to be honest, I'm most excited about the music.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to start off the party with a DJ set of my own. Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
Detroit in the house.
Yeah, Detroit in the house. And then we'll have a couple of other special musical guests. We'll have a DJ that'll close off the party with the little dance-off that Eric's going to talk about. And then we'll have also another live performance that I'm really, really excited to see. So those are some things I'm excited about. What are you excited about, Eric?
Well, I'm excited for all of the music, and we have a couple of the folks from the Jazz Mafia in the band tonight, so that'll be fun. But I'm most excited about the 2nd annual dance-off. We launched the dance-off last year, and what's this? Okay, Jose LaSalle last year won a lifetime pass to Verge. Lifetime pass to Verge with a standing backflip. Not to really intimidate everybody, but it's going to be super fun. Can't wait to see you guys there tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian to talk about the emerging leaders.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So as Eric mentioned, my name is Brian Lewis, and I am Program Manager of greenbiz.org and our illustrious Emerging Leaders Program. The Green Biz Emerging Leaders Program, if you don't know already, connects and grows the next generation of sustainable professionals of color. And since 2017, we've curated a community of over 200 young, diverse superstars who are actively changing the world in which we live. And so for each premier Green Biz event, of which this is one of them, we select usually 10, but in this case, we selected 13 exceptional young leaders of color, again, who are actively changing the world, and they hail from across the world, with roots as far as Iran and Nigeria. And they bring a diversity of perspective that is both inspiring, invigorating, and enlightening. And some are breaking barriers in nuclear fusion, some are helping to develop communities and uplift environmental justice, others are leading the charge to empower youth leaders for climate innovation. But the one factor that unites them all is that, frankly, they're dope people. They're very, very dope people. And today, fortunately, I have the distinct pleasure and opportunity to introduce them all to you. So without further ado, I'm going to ask for all of our current emerging leaders at the front of the room to stand so they can be recognized. Please, Verge, give us a warm, warm welcome to our emerging leaders for Verge 23. Appreciate y'all. I'm so proud to be a part of this program myself. And really, this is why our Emerging Leaders Program is so critical, because not only do we open opportunities for young leaders of color to experience a world-class sustainability conference, but we use this as an entry point to engage them in a critically connected and well-resourced community of peers that we call the Emerging Leaders Network. So we don't just stop here at this event. We keep them engaged in an ongoing platform that allows them to connect with other leaders of color, to connect with mentors in this space, to receive coaching and professional development, and then also to give back to their own community. And so as a part of this network, we engage and encourage our members to make the connections that they need to improve their careers, to get mentorship from folks in our Green Biz executive networks, and to leverage connections for opportunities for jobs and employment. But again, like any great endeavor, we cannot do this alone. First and foremost, I want to thank our partners, United Airlines, Google, and LinkedIn, for helping to support this community and the broader community of emerging leaders who continue to receive support and professional development in an ongoing manner. But now we need you to join in. Again, the QR code was displayed earlier, but if you want to get engaged, come tonight, rise up, and rise up with us as we grow the next generation of leaders, people of color who are giving back and engaging and supporting environmental justice in our communities. With that being said, I thank you all, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's day 2, and I'm so excited for this first conversation. We have a lot of sessions here that are talking about how difficult it is to implement different climate technologies, about how we need to be changing workflows, how things are getting complicated. And I love these conversations. It's showing how this sector is truly maturing to the point where we're figuring out how to be moving forward with these little implementations. And also, sometimes when we talk about these things, we talk about it in terms of like trade-offs, how like the ways we're using things can't be done in the ways that we're currently powering things, and that creates new complications. And sometimes when we have those nuances in the conversation, I feel like we're losing track of the fact of what we're moving away from has a lot of sacrifices built into it also. And so in our first conversation, I will be joined by 2 people that truly understand how there's a human impact of how we're powering our world right now with fossil fuels. And with that, I would love to welcome to the stage John Beard Jr., who was a petrochemical employee for 40 years and is now part of the Port Arthur Clean Action Network. John, please come on up. And I'd also love to welcome Ebony Twilley Martin, who is the Executive Director of Greenpeace USA. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
John, I'd love to start with you. As I just mentioned, I know you live in Port Arthur, Texas, and you describe this as truly a petrochemical hub. Can you tell me a little bit about the relationship between the petrochemical industry and Port Arthur?
Sure. I have a saying that I like to use. First of all, good afternoon to everyone. Well, afternoon in Texas. It's only morning here. But as we say in Texas, howdy, greetings. But Port Arthur, I guess you could say, has had a unique relationship with petrochemicals because just down the road from us is where the industry basically started, in Beaumont. And the first 2 refineries were built in Port Arthur. Texaco, which is now Motiva, the largest in the country, and Gulf, which is now Valero, which is another one. And while there have been some good times and some things that were done that helped the community and helped people, that's not so much the case now. Now the community is ravaged by blight, by degradation, and also by high rates of cancer and other respiratory diseases and illnesses.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that impact is like as far as for the community, of those health impacts, the economic impacts?
Well, sure. For those of you who are not familiar, let's take a look at some of these slides that I had put together. You know, when you look at it from Google Earth, you see a lot of the petrochemicals. Down to the lower part, you'll see 2 of the 3 liquefied natural gas facilities that are in Port Arthur's immediate area. That's within 5 to 10 miles of Port Arthur, and a third is even closer, about halfway. But all of that white you see, when you zoom in, that is petrochemical infrastructure. Motiva refinery at the top, to the far right is Total, the largest emitter of benzene in the country, and just to the right lower portion of the corner is Chevron Phillips, which has been cited by EPA for over $100 million with improvements because of excessive flaring, and Valero with over 600 air quality violations in 5 years. All of this has made the atmosphere, the air we have to breathe, extremely toxic. And it is shown in the high rates, as I said earlier, of cancer, more than twice the state and national average, as well as heart, lung, and kidney disease. So we are sacrificed so America can have oil and gas. And it's time for us, it's time for that sacrifice to end. We can no longer tolerate that, and it is an unacceptable condition.
And I know we are talking about one place in Texas right now, but this is not an anomaly. And so, Ebony, I'd love to hear a little bit more. How does this map on to what you're seeing in other locations in the US and around the world?
So the gas industry has created this narrative that oil and gas are a moral imperative and that it's necessary. And especially gas, they've kind of created this narrative that it's cleaner than other types of fossil fuels and that it will lead to economic or energy justice in the global South and energy security in the US and in Europe, especially with the Russian war. But those things aren't necessarily true. We know that the #1 driver of the climate crisis is oil and gas. And liquid natural gas isn't any cleaner. We know that it's just as dirty as coal because of the methane leaks, also with the refinement process that it has to go through. So we see these impacts throughout the world, and we know that this will also impact communities that are on the front line experiencing extreme weather crisis. We also know that this will continue to impact, as John said, communities where these infrastructures are placed. And we know that they are placed more predominantly in Black and brown communities. If you look at environmental pollution and you really want to know what is the #1 driver of it, it's not home value, it's not income, it really is race. And so we see this not just in the US, but we also see this with the global South. And as John said, this is something that can't continue to happen. And if we are going to move to a just-in-phase transition, we can't allow this LNG build-out to continue to happen, because that is really locking us into decades more of oil and gas expansion and also those exports, which just continue to perpetuate harm.
I want to put a finer point on that word that John used, that idea of sacrifice, these sacrifice zones, which to me is just like so chilling of this idea of how there's certain communities that are disproportionately impacted by this. Can you tell me a little bit more, Ebony, about what's lost within communities when impacted by infrastructure?
Sure. And I think we can look at the economic costs. First of all, extreme weather in the US that was fueled by the climate crisis cost the US $165 billion alone in 2022. And we know what communities that impacts. We also see communities that are on the front line. If you talk to folks in Detroit, one of the things they're concerned about is the flooding in their communities. And the insurance companies are not covering that anymore. And so those communities are sacrificed. We also see right here in the state of California, the oil wells. This is the only state that doesn't at least have a 3,200-foot buffer. Kids can look out of their window and literally see an active well pump, pumping toxins, pumping pollution into their bodies, causing higher asthma rates, higher respiratory issues, higher cancer rates, higher birth defects. This targets certain communities, and in California alone, 70% of those communities with those oil wells are Black and brown. So we are again saying that certain communities can be sacrificed in the name of providing energy and providing things that we have become used to that actually we shouldn't be used to. And we know that in order for us to do this transition, we need to pick up the pace, and we can't continue to sacrifice those who are most vulnerable.
John, you were a petrochemical worker, I understand. Port Arthur, I thought you said the population there is 17,000, is that correct?
How much?
17,000, is that how many people
Port
live
Arthur
in
population,
yeah.
no, close to 57,000.
Oh, 57,000, apologies. Right. So can you tell me a little bit about the relationship between the petrochemical companies and the people that live there, what kind of employment opportunities there are, what the economic relationship is between the companies and the community?
Well, as a kid growing up, and I'm not going to give away my age because that'll tell you more information than I want to reveal, but when I was growing up, kids' parents either worked for one of the three companies, or they did business with a company, worked for a company that did business in the plant, or did business with a company that was doing business in the plant, or they worked for the city, the county, or the school district, or one of the three major hospitals. But with the decline of the oil and gas industry in 1973, with the oil embargo, plus computerization, mechanization, and a reduction in workforce, Now you have fewer and fewer people that are actually working in the industry. In fact, industry imports people from all over the country. If you drive through Port Arthur, you'll see license plates from far away as Alaska, wow. And in virtually any of the 48 states in the Union, in the lower 48. So we no longer have those jobs. And what stands out most about that is the fact that unemployment in Port Arthur is the third highest in the state, higher than areas of the state down toward Brownsville near the Mexico border that have no petrochemical industry at all. How can that be when they talk and tout the jobs that we bring good things to life, as one of them says, when what they're bringing is more pollution, more death and destruction, more adverse climatological effects, 5 major hurricanes in 17 years, and the heat wave that we had, in addition to the Great Texas Freeze I'm sure you all heard about. So what are we sacrificing? Why are we doing this if we have nothing to show for it? At least if we had jobs, we could do better, but we don't have that. So what the conditions look like is, as I said earlier, a lot of blight, a lot of vacant lots, a lot of dilapidated homes and housing, because people aren't making enough money to have decent and satisfactory homes. The average home value is $65,000 or less. Now, what can you get for that for a family? And the average income is only $35,000. But what the area's income is more than twice that. So essentially, we are being sacrificed. We're being sold a bill of goods, and we're being used because, as you saw in those pictures, the more petrochem they have, the more they want to accumulate there. Why? Because, as one of the captains of industry said, it's the path of least resistance, and we know that we won't get any opposition. We'll make the same old promises and give nothing in return.
I also recognize that we're at such a tricky spot of this transition in the sense that, a lot of our world is powered by fossil fuels. There's a lot of companies here that we have people that are actively working to move away from them, but at the same time, we're living in the world that we're in right now. And also that a lot of these companies they're huge. They have a lot of investments in different climate tech. They're accelerating different solutions. So what's a good way to be engaging companies to be looking at the ways where they're doing harm and also be helping the acceleration of the transition, and once again, from the perspective of what companies might be able to do? Ebony?
I think that there's a lot that companies can do. One of the things that we have been focused on, we understand that a just transition will be a transformation in this country, not just in terms of economy or economic transition, but also a social transition as well. And one thing we have to work to ensure is that our workers are taken care of. And oftentimes they're left behind, and we saw this in the coal transition. We saw that the executives got like a golden parachute, and we saw that the workers instead had their pensions, their retirements cut, they had their health care costs cut, and so they were left with black lung. We also saw that the cleanup in the communities folks bailed out on that. So we saw harmful toxins being poured into the water and perpetuating a cycle of harm. So when we say we need to do a transition, we also need to remember that communities and workers should be at the center of that transition. So that's one of the reasons Greenpeace has been working with the United Auto Workers Union, for example. We have been partnering with them to ensure that this transition with our automobiles and our vehicles to EVs, that the workers are taken care of and that they still get their union jobs, their union pay, and that we aren't doing harm to those communities that are most impacted. So I would say to these two organizations and companies thinking this through, make sure that the people that are impacted the most are at the center of the conversations, and not just at the center, but you bring them to the center of the table as well so that their voices are heard.
Yeah. And John, what advice do you have for working with fossil fuel companies and energy companies generally to be holding people in the center of these different decisions and bringing them to the table?
Well, first of all, these companies have to consider where they are. They have to respect, first of all, indigenous rights, because those indigenous nations and peoples have been trampled on for not quite millennia, but for quite a number of years, hundreds of years. And their rights are still not respected. Also, the rights of BIPOC communities have to and essentially should be respected. Ebony said it well. They need to have a seat at the table, because if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. And that's not going to work either. So a just transition has to be one that is fair and equitable, that involves and engages that community on its grassroots baseline level. If it's not doing that, then it's not going to be effective. The people that have been left behind by the petrochemical revolution, if this transition is to be real and just and equitable, have to be brought not along, but be integral to and involved deeply in the process of this transition. And it has to be a real transition. It can't be word speak. It has to be something actually that's measurable, that makes a difference in the lives and health of people, and that helps grow communities. No different than it helped other communities that were the beneficiaries of the petrochemical industry.
Well, thank you both so much for the work that you're doing here and for bringing this message to our stage and this reminder of putting human at the center of this transition. And please join me in thanking Ebony Twilley Martin from Greenpeace and John Beard Jr. Thank you so much.
I'm Sarah Golden, VP of Energy at Green Biz. Corporations have been trailblazers of clean energy deployments. Hundreds have committed to procure enough clean energy to offset all electricity on an annual basis. Dozens more have gone a step further, committing to match clean energy in real time, sometimes called 24/7 carbon-free energy. These initiatives, while well-intentioned and often innovative, incentivize focusing on an organization's energy emissions, rather than the emissions of the system as a whole. That's why my overhyped trend for 2023 is individual company clean energy goals. Climate change is a global problem, and that means solutions must be transformational. Too often, focusing on an organization's emissions translates into an exercise in accounting, not decarbonization. Sometimes that looks like organizations adding new renewables and parts of the grid. First, it looks like a company selling polluting assets to get the emissions off their own books and onto someone else's. Which brings me to my most underhyped trend, systems-level clean energy goals. Organizations serious about climate should orient themselves to how their actions are impacting emissions broadly. Increasingly, this is emerging as a focus. Some are beginning to look at the marginal emissions from each energy decision, taking into account how to maximize benefits. Hopefully, this will soon be the standard. The mindset shift from the myopic to the holistic is in itself transformational and emblematic of where climate action must head.
Hello, I'm James Ball, Director of Buildings for Green Biz. As I scoured the media in search of an overhyped trend for this year, the answer became clear. There is nothing overhyped about sustainable buildings right now. Seriously, recent coverage on the benefits of heat pumps are long overdue. And topics like the necessity of electrification and innovations in low-carbon concrete deserve all the exposure they get. The relative obscurity of sustainable building news may stem from characteristics of the industry itself. For one, buildings are place-based, so most of our industry's companies are small and local. Each building is also different, so its features are unique, and its products are typically sold business to business, outside of the public's eye. Also, many sustainability features, like improved insulation and efficient heating and cooling systems, are behind the walls or in a utility closet, so the general public doesn't see them even once they're in use. I offer these characteristics not as an excuse, but as context for the challenge. Come on, building industry, let's give them something to talk about. So, if nothing is overhyped, that means everything is underhyped. My choice, therefore, goes to the story that we need to get the general public passionate. Sustainable buildings improve people's quality of life. We are, after all, an indoor species, spending over 90% of our time in buildings. Creating sustainable buildings isn't just about eliminating 40% of global carbon emissions. This is an opportunity to reimagine our society's relationship with nature. Biophilic design is the practice of connecting people and nature within our built environments, and research continually shows its incredible benefits. Natural light in offices reduces headaches by 63%.
Increasing fresh air indoors reduces mistakes on math tests by 16%. Sustainable buildings can improve people's health and happiness. Now that is a story worth hyping.
Man, those over-under speakers were great, weren't they? So, we have often what I find when we are talking about what to be doing to address climate change, the conversation gravitates towards things where we have a very clear path of how to address them. And that does not always map on to where the most emissions actually are. And often we are not addressing all of the things that need to happen in the industrial sector in order to actually reach a net zero world. So we often call these sectors hard to abate. And our next speaker, Kate Scott, says that maybe that is not the best thing to call them. Maybe we should actually be having more conversations about what's available today to truly be addressing these. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Kate Scott from the Department of Energy.
I don't know what you've all heard, but I'm here to tell you the rumors are not true. Despite being called hard to decarbonize, not everything is hard about decarbonizing the United States industrial sector. There are opportunities to deploy and to make money today. So to start, I'm going to tell you the story of the first time I heard these rumors. I was considering a job with a steel processing company outside of Chicago, Illinois. And in a conversation with my potential boss, the chief operating officer, I asked him about the company's plans to decarbonize. And he responded with many of the same assumptions that we've all heard before, that operational efficiency and energy efficiency are the only levers, and other projects are not core to the business and its value proposition. And maybe I was naive, but I couldn't accept these answers. There had to be more that we can do. And so I joined a group of like-minded individuals at the Department of Energy's Office of Technology Transitions to map out a plan. And we did just that. Over the course of 3 Pathway to Commercial Liftoff reports that are representative of hundreds of internal and external interviews and analysis, we evaluated the path to decarbonization of 8 industrial sectors. This is the largest sources of US emissions, ranging from chemicals, refining, steel, food and beverage, cement, pulp and paper, glass, and aluminum. And we looked at the role of multiple different decarbonization pillars in getting to a path to net zero. And unfortunately, what we found is we are not on track. Despite making up 14% of US industrial emissions, the commitments from top players in these industries represents only a 1% reduction in US emissions by 2035. And the full potential of favorite technologies like energy efficiency would also only represent a 1% reduction. And that's if everything goes perfectly. And so it's not just about technology adoption, it's also about investment. The Liftoff report found that we need, at minimum, $700 billion to $1.1 trillion of capital expenditures to build the projects that we would need to almost, not even fully decarbonize. And so what's going on? We're hearing that companies are passing up positive rates of return, and we wanted to get to the bottom of this. And we heard 3 rumors over the course of our conversations. First, that the technologies aren't ready. Second, that the investments don't pencil. And third, that we don't know where to start. Well, the next section of this talk is going to feel like an episode of Mythbusters on double speed. But I want to take you through the key myth-busting insights from our reports. And so first, let's start with the technologies. This page is a snapshot of what we heard companies were evaluating, had in operation, or our DOE experts told us was at commercial scale. And what you can see from the dark green on this page is that there are deployable, proven technologies available in every sector and in all these decarbonization levers. So let's look at an example in steel. There are opportunities in electrification to continue the use of electric arc furnaces, opportunities in raw material substitution through increased use of direct reduced iron, and finally, of course, in energy efficiency through unit operations. So let's go to the second rumor, that the investments don't pencil. This is a chart that outlines the potential path to net zero from our baseline emissions in 2021. And each of these boxes represents emissions abated by a different activity. For today, I want to focus on that dark blue box. There lies the money on the table. These are projects of proven technologies that we estimate would be above a 10% internal rate of return. And projects in that box could abate up to 20% of these baseline emissions. So let's open it up and take a look inside. For cement, opportunities there represent $1 billion of value. This is through clinker substitution or use of alternative fuels. And we know it's possible. In Europe, they're already getting 50% of their energy for cement production from alternative fuels. In the US, it's 15%. So finally, let's turn to where to start. You're not supposed to be able to read that, but this is a snapshot of a pathway to commercial liftoff that we created for every sector that I mentioned. These pathways offer a vision for leadership in these sectors. They offer technologies across the research, development, demonstration, and deployment continuum, as well as actions and targets that these industries should go after. And then finally, they estimate the investment opportunity. So, for example, in chemicals, we found that between $90 to $120 billion of projects in that net positive 10% rate of return exist. So this is literally billions of dollars that could go to companies' bottom lines. And like all rumors, there are bits of truth. And we also mapped out the challenges that are holding many of these projects back and keeping them on paper. These are things like operational challenges of actually fitting retrofits into very tight operational timelines and maintenance timelines. The capital flow challenges to industries that are traditionally financing on balance sheet, which puts industrial decarbonization head-to-head with maintenance priorities, and a few others. And I'll say most of these are not requiring technology breakthroughs. They require innovation and creativity from many of the folks in this room today. And so it's easy to believe that industrial decarbonization is only going to get more and more important. We're hearing things like the carbon border adjustment mechanisms coming out of Europe and the climate disasters that happened around the world this summer. But the time is now. We have the support we need. There are unprecedented billions of dollars of investment from the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law coming out of the US government. There are emerging demand signals for low carbon products through things like First Movers Coalition and the Buy Clean Act from the federal government. And then there are early private sector movers that are figuring out where they can seize this new market. And so that's why I'm asking this group to lean in and be creative. Don't accept the easy path, because we want to make decarbonization put industry, their communities, and the United States in the driver's seat for the future. So the next time that you hear somebody say industrial decarbonization is hard to decarbonize, I hope you'll tell them to stop spreading rumors, because there are billions of dollars on the table today. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Editor-at-Large, Heather Clancy.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I have the honor at
Green Biz of thinking about corporations and how they use innovation in their work, in their sustainability work. And I am so excited for this conversation because two of the companies I talk to a lot are Google and Microsoft. They don't use technology just to serve an end. They're also looking at this as a way of innovation for their companies. It is my pleasure to introduce to the stage the Chief Sustainability Officer of Google, Kate Brandt, and the Chief Sustainability Officer of Microsoft, Melanie Nakagawa. Please join me. It's a long walk.
It is a little bit of a walk.
So I think one of the places I want to start was just a little backstory because I think many people think of Microsoft and Google as rivals, and you are in many ways. But the two of you have known each other for quite a long time, and you also talk a lot. And I just wanted to explore that.
Please try again.
My iPad is speaking with me. That's not going wrong. But basically, I wanted to just explore that a little bit. You talk frequently. You just penned a really interesting op-ed on women in sustainability and leadership. So what is the value of this collaboration? Let's just start there, and I have one other question on this for you, too. I'll start with you, Melanie.
Sure. I mean, yes, Kate and I go way, way back. And I think the value of the collaboration is, one, we can learn so much from each other. I'm actually relatively new into this space. I recently joined Microsoft earlier this year. And so, my first call was to Kate to basically say, hey, in this world of CSOs, like, what should I be learning about? What do I need to know? And there's been this growing group of us. When I was in Europe earlier this year, I learned that there were like 60 people with this title in this conference I was at earlier. And so I think it's really, the collaboration is just helpful in knowing that we're on a shared journey together. We have a lot of the same challenges, and there's a real value in trying to tackle these challenges together.
So I'm curious, what one thing did Melanie pull off that you wish you had accomplished or that you really admired?
Yeah, I mean, I've been so thrilled to see you come into this role since we go all the way back to college. So we've known each other for a really long time and spent time in DC together. And I've admired your career so much and all the incredible work that you did in the Senate and at the State Department, in private equity, and then, of course, just your most recent work at the White House, especially on Ukraine, just such powerful work. So I've been thrilled for us to have this ongoing conversation about, like, how do we translate that time in Washington, that time in the public sector, into corporations like Google and Microsoft, and also how can we be stronger together? I feel like every conversation you and I have, ultimately we come back to, you're doing this, we're doing that. How do we bring ourselves together to drive more progress more quickly? And I think that's exactly where we are. We've set ambitious goals as companies, as nations. Now we need to roll up our sleeves and get it done. Pledges to progress, I think is exactly what you said. So I'm thrilled that you're in this role, and I think there's a lot more we're going to get to do together.
I mean, I think too, I don't know if everyone knows this about Kate, but the other place we have something in common that I really admire too with Kate is our work in national security.
Yeah.
Again, to this audience who, we won't do a poll of who's a policy person or a climate person or an energy one or water or waste. But our backgrounds are also in the national security field, Kate coming in from DoD and the Navy. And so the idea that these are real, sustainability is not just an environmental imperative, but it's a security imperative. And there's just different ways to view this problem, this challenge, and create opportunities from it. And I think Kate has really been pioneering how do you bring sustainability into rooms where it hasn't been top of mind.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you're collectively spending billions, and I'm not going to name the numbers because you have different focuses of that money, but what has been the impact of that? What is it, the goal, the strategy behind the investments? Like let's take the fund first.
Sure. So for those that might not be familiar, Microsoft has the Climate Innovation Fund. It's a $1 billion commitment to invest in innovative technologies to scale markets. The impact of the Climate Innovation Fund, which as of, I would say today, around $700 million of that fund has been deployed into really innovative solutions and technologies, has a twofold purpose. One is, how does it deliver impact for Microsoft's own operational commitments, whether it's around building materials or sustainable aviation fuel, but how is it delivering impact to support our own growth? But then secondly, how is it delivering impact for the world in terms of creating new markets where there haven't been these markets, and also how are we helping to support embedded into that strategy climate equity, so investments in things like block power that's helping to work in, bring bring energy efficient technologies into more urban environments. But really, how do you leverage that catalytic impact from what is a corporate fund, but that's so much more outsized than our four corners of our strategy?
The structure of your investments has been somewhat different than that, lots of grant programs. And so explain to me how that fits the overall strategy at Google.
Yeah, the way that we look at it is we've set ambitious goals for our own operations, how we want to look as a business by 2030, 24/7 carbon-free energy across all of our offices and data centers. And so embedded in there is a huge amount of investment in clean energy projects, in innovation, and in partnerships. And then furthermore, we like to look at how we support the broader ecosystem, be that NGOs, nonprofits, as well as startups. So just to kind of briefly dive in there, for us, as we look at 24/7 carbon-free energy, this is a space where, between 2010 and this year, we've invested in 80 projects around the world, 10 gigawatts. By 2040, that looks like about $10 billion in terms of what that commitment is. But in addition, we really want to keep driving towards innovation. And so for us, that's expanding beyond wind and solar. That's backup battery storage, like at our data center in Belgium, where we did that in a pioneering way, or partnering with innovative companies like Fervo, who are advancing enhanced geothermal. And of course, it's also partnerships. And one of the places where we've come together in great partnership with Microsoft is around the 24/7 Compact. This is an initiative we helped found with UN Energy a couple years ago, where we're bringing together companies as well as cities and federal governments to say, how do we drive this change together? And then beyond that, in the NGO space, there is so much opportunity to unlock innovation, especially through AI. So whether that's grants to the World Resources Institute to enable them to address extreme heat through AI, or our Google for Startups Accelerator program, where we've had 5 classes now focused on climate and circular economy, enabling startups to work with us to think about how they deploy technology, how they advance the whole ecosystem. So we really think about it as we all need to drive this progress together.
Yeah. I want to actually, before we move on to AI, because I do want to spend time there, Microsoft has also, you're deploying geothermal. Have you made any geothermal investments that you're aware of?
So we've used the Innovation Fund to work in this space, but also we have a geothermal asset on campus that I think you might have seen when you were there. But we have a thermal energy center that is part of our new building renovation campus that's on the east side of Seattle. And it really is just trying to showcase for our employees, but also for others, how is the Microsoft footprint a living lab for innovation when it comes to demonstrating and piloting new technologies, both on our campuses, but also through our own corporate investments, as well as through the investments through the fund. And really thinking through, it takes a range of energy solutions. It's not just going to be geothermal. We also, earlier this year, announced an investment into fusion power technology for the first, exactly, with Helion. And so it's really just thinking about what is the large sources of power and carbon-free power that we're going to need for not only our 2030 targets to be carbon negative, but even out to 2050. And it's a mix of energy solutions. So how are we helping to spur those markets around that so we can meet these commitments in the time frame that we need?
Right. Artificial intelligence. Had a tutorial yesterday morning, packed. Everyone's trying to sort this out. So what role do you think artificial intelligence, or what role is it playing now? It's already playing quite a role, actually, in your strategy.
Yeah, so, we have been an AI-first company at Google now for 7 years, and the approach that we take is we want to look at how can we be both bold and responsible in using AI to address some of the world's greatest challenges, and climate is a huge opportunity for AI. BCG released some research not long ago that showed that by 2030, AI could actually contribute 5 to 10% of the emissions reductions that we need to get to by the end of this decade. So clearly there's an opportunity. And as we've begun to dig in and really look at where are the places where AI can have the most impact, I would name 3. The first is around information. We're always looking for ways as an information company to unlock information to enable people to take action. There's tools like eco-friendly routing. You may have even used Google Maps to get here today and seen that little green leaf. In the background, we're using AI to tell you what's the most fuel-efficient route if it doesn't already have a similar ETA. And that's already saved people about 2.4 million metric tons of CO2. That's like taking about 500,000 cars off the road for a year. Also, optimization is the second area. This could look like the work that we've done with American Airlines and Breakthrough Energy on contrails. So I'm sure you've seen, those little white wisps behind jets in the sky. That actually composes about 1/3 of the global warming impact of aviation, which we know is a very hard to abate sector. And so there we've been using AI to better understand contrails, why they occur, and then to reduce them by about half in these pilots that we've done with American. Then the last space that I know, Melanie, we were just talking about a moment ago, is around early warnings. How do we use AI to get better information in the hands of people and communities when they're going to be in harm's way from extreme weather? And we're doing that especially in the area of riverine flooding, giving 460 million people around the world in over 40 countries information 7 days in advance about flooding. So those are some of the big opportunities that we're seeing.
I love this talk because, between what our two companies are doing, there's such a incredible, I hope you all leave here really feeling inspired about the opportunity set. So I'm going to add a few more examples to the mix to really get people's minds thinking about what does this opportunity set look like around AI. So for Microsoft, we are a data company at the end of the day, and it's really about thinking through, for us, AI is what gets me excited about it. It has the potential to let people learn faster, discover more information faster and quicker than ever before, and bring in timelines for discovery of all the different types of things. It's also about a way to, when it comes to climate change, this is about a race against time. Like that is the biggest fight that we are facing. Can we go fast at the speed we need in the right time frame? And so one of the things that we've done as a data platform is to come up with a product, the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, which is allowing the use of AI, but also using that AI attached to large data sets to help companies better understand decisions. If say you're a retail company, how do you decide what material to use, or what's the carbon content of various material choices you can be making, but really getting those insights through the data into the key people's hands who are making those decisions. Wherever you are in the company, it gives you the opportunity to know, picking this material and other, or doing a what-if analysis. That's one of the offerings that we have within the product side. The other part about AI that gets me really excited is around what it can do as well. So there's an aspect of, Kate mentioned 3 examples, I'll add 2 more to the mix. One is around water, something that's near and dear to my own heart. Microsoft has a commitment to be water positive, along with being zero waste and carbon negative all by 2030. And in that water positive commitment, it's about investing in innovative technology solutions around water. One of the stats that I heard recently was that 30% of water is lost to basically waste and leaks. And so what can we do about that space? So we invested in a company called Fido Technologies, which is using AI and acoustic systems to help detect leaks in municipal water systems and stop those leaks, which then help companies, but also municipalities, deal with water replenishment and have access to more supply of that water so it's not getting wasted into leaks and things like that, which is so fundamental and key. Another example to give is one that I would talk about when it comes to, I mentioned the data aggregation, there's the water component. And then the third area for AI that I think is really interesting is around farmers and how you can get that insights on farms. Farms are quite large. Rather than having to walk the farm, how do you help farmers take those insights and grow more crop per drop? And that's another way to use those AI insights from satellite imagery to on-farm ground information. How do you help farmers do more with what they have using this kind of technology and get more production into the world? And so there's just, hopefully they're not top of mind for all of you, but they will be when you walk out of this room, of what the potential is for AI solutions to catalyze sustainability.
One follow-up here, though, in this tutorial as well, the point was made that it's not just the quantity of data, it's the quality of the data. So how are you taking time to make sure that the data's right and also that it's not biased?
Well, one area, though, is actually through our work on responsible AI, which is actually something that we're doing collectively with not just Google, but other partners through our responsible AI work and the Frontier Forum, is to ensure that there are safeguards attached to how we're gathering this data, and there's guardrails applied to the responsibility around the AI data that we're putting together. We're also working in initiatives like the Carbon Call, which is just calling for a standardization and an interoperability of methodologies so we can all count a ton of carbon the same way, that the bean counting is done in the right way, and that's interoperable around the different standards bodies that are out there. So we all have a common framework to address these things.
Yeah, and I would just add to, we as an information company think a lot about how do we organize high quality information and make it really accessible to people. So one initiative that I'm particularly excited about is something called Data Commons. This is a project that was founded by Google, and really the ultimate vision is to be for public data sets. So these could be data from the UN, from federal government entities. How do we better organize public data to unlock its potential and make it really useful to people? And what we've done with Data Commons is we already have 200 public data sets, but you had to be fairly technical to be able to access them. Now we've added a chat function, an LLM function on the front of it. So now you can go query public data sets from climate models to agricultural data to population data and ask questions in a chat-like function. And so we're really excited about those opportunities to take high-quality public data and then to really unlock it so we can drive more action more effectively.
We won't go down the path of the energy and AI right now. We'll put a pin on that, and we'll definitely be following on that later. I have a lightning round for you. So maybe you've already answered this question, but what climate tech has the potential to have the biggest positive impact in your work? Melanie.
I would say it takes multiple solutions, but if I have to pick one, I would pick transmission. I think the work that needs to be done, we have access to the energy systems around the world. There's plentiful amounts of renewable potential out there, but it really is that interconnectivity of the transmission systems that I think is a really important unlock for making sure that we hit our 100-0 commitments on clean energy and carbon-free power, but also to reach our carbon negative targets.
Yeah, and I would similarly build on that and say, what we see through research is that digital technology is especially powerful for unlocking decarbonization in energy systems as well as transportation. So you just addressed energy, Melanie. So to pick up on transportation, we're seeing that in some economies like Germany, digital technologies could reduce the footprint of transportation by up to 70%. So that's solutions like what I was just talking about with optimizing routing, that's giving people better information about public transit. It's also work like what we're doing with cities through Project Greenlight to help better sequence traffic lights through the power of AI to reduce starting and stopping events, which reduces emissions. So I think in both energy and transportation, digital technology, especially AI, are going to create major breakthroughs in decarbonization.
What tech do you think we most underappreciate or haven't spent enough time talking about? I'll start with you this time, Kate.
Yeah. I am a huge proponent of energy efficiency and demand response. They're not as sexy as some of the technologies we've been talking about, but they are very powerful. They have a great business case. And we've been working on this at Google, both in our own operations with our data centers. Data centers use quite a bit of energy, and so the more that we can shift loads of non-urgent tasks, either to times of day or places where the grid is cleaner, or just to relieve pressure on grids, we're beginning to do that in grids around the world. And that kind of demand response we're also enabling people to do at home through their Nest Learning thermostats, through Nest Renew, where they can actually do more work in their homes at times of day when the grid is cleaner. So I think I'm a big believer in the power of demand response and energy efficiency.
I'd say you framed it as underappreciated?
Yeah.
Underappreciated. I would say carbon removal. No clapping for carbon removal. Thank you. So I would say carbon removal in the sense that we fundamentally, not just we, the IPCC says it is fundamental to reaching any of these global commitments that the world has set. It's going to require carbon removal, high quality, high durability carbon removal. And I'd say it's underappreciated because there is a market that is nascent and it's beginning to grow in this space. And we are really eager to see more companies, more governments and others join into the carbon removal market area. The methodologies are being developed. Microsoft's been a leader in developing a carbon removal market where there hasn't been one, and we've been really keen to bring others with us. We've published 3 white papers that are very detailed in terms of how we did it, who we did it with, the methodologies we applied, all those details. And so I think it's underappreciated in the sense that we really want to see this market grow, and until you get more people playing in this space, it won't get to that growth that we need it to be. So I would call it underappreciated because I think people haven't really fully understood this is a vital component to corporate commitments and frankly to the planetary goals that we've set.
All right, we're wound down, but I'm going to give you each a few moments to say, in the spirit of collaboration, what final advice would you have for the sustainability people in the room about how to use climate innovation in their own organizations? Kate.
Yeah, I'll just touch on 3 things. We recently did a study with Harris Poll where we talked to a bunch of CXOs, leaders across companies, and we asked them about what would it take for them to accelerate sustainability in their organizations. And 84% of them said it's really important how you organize yourself inside the company, that you have clear strategy, clear governance, and ideally a leader who's driving that work across the business. So I think that's a really important ingredient. The second is to very much not see this work as only about how you operate your business. That's critical, that's table stakes, but it's also so much about the opportunity space. We've both talked about How are our businesses thinking about new products and solutions? Every company can do that. So sustainability really needs to be brought into business strategy, into product strategy. And then the last one, we were talking about this backstage, is we need all skill sets in the climate movement. It is so critical, from designers to communicators to engineers. And so how do we bring even more people, even more skills into this movement so we can do more together more quickly?
I would say that first and foremost, to hit all those pieces, one of the key sort of table stakes to that is skilling. And so how are we actually working to skill the workforce at all stages, both in undergrad, grad programs, and then even in executive programs, to have the sustainability skill sets and knowledge to bring to whatever job they are, whether it's a designer, an engineer, an HR officer, a finance officer. So how do we do that? And LinkedIn recently put out a study that talked about really how demand for sustainability skills and jobs is outstripping the supply. And all of you here probably are obviously in the sustainability community, but we need 15 times size of these people in the room to actually fill these roles. And one of the key rate limiters is not having enough skills for that. So ensuring that curriculums are dedicated to that. But even companies are putting time into this. Recently, Microsoft hosted a summit last week where we had a whole academy day dedicated to learning new skill sets across the business. And really kind of seeing more corporates try to adopt in-house skilling programs, but also working with programs outside is a key part to make sustainability part of everyone's job, and bringing that skill set into your work.
Thank you so much. Really a pleasure to have you here, Kate Brandt and Melanie Nakagawa.
Please welcome to the stage Senior Vice President, Sustainability, Dylan Siegler.
Hi, everybody. As the voice of God just told you, I'm Dylan Siegler, and I lead sustainability at Green Biz Group. I am going to state the painfully obvious. Urgency is growing for us to confront the many crises that we're facing. I'm incredibly impatient. I think you're impatient. I think my guests today are very impatient. And in the midst of all of this, a new wave of climate activism has emerged. And that tension that's created in the ecosystem when activists come in and have different opinions about how we move forward than perhaps some in the corporate space or in the government space might think, it puts a little bit of pressure on the rest of us to make sure that the communication and collaboration that we're putting together is really well-oiled. So we wanted to bring two really fabulous activists here to talk with us about the evolving role of activism, and particularly youth activism, as we confront these crises that we're facing. So I want to give Shia Bastida and Jerome Foster a chance to each introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump into what I hope will be a really rich discussion. And we have a surprise guest actually at the end. With about 5 minutes to spare before the end of our time on this stage, we're going to invite back up Kate Brandt from Google to actually have a little bit of a dialogue with the activists, because isn't that what we're here to do? Jerome, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jerome Foster II. I am a climate justice activist. I'm one of the youngest members of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, and I'm the co-founder of Wake Up. Today, I just want to thank everyone for being here and taking the time to listen to youth activists and kind of understanding how we pair climate action with also advancing environmental justice and equity.
And Shia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, like Jerome said, for listening to us. My name is Shia Bastida, and I come from an indigenous community in central Mexico. And I have been involved in the climate activism space for over 4 or 5 years, but my parents met at the first ever Earth Summit in 1992. So I like to say that I was born into the climate justice movement and just really, really immersed in a view of the world that was about how do we build something better. And my community in Mexico was affected by flooding, by pollution, by Mexico City extracting our water. So we really lived at the crossroads of what I see as this system of extractivism that leaves communities in a very precarious stage. So Jerome and I were both part of the youth climate strikes, and in 2019, New York City organized a protest of 300,000 people. So today we are here building on that legacy of mobilization and on that legacy of what the new generation has to bring for climate solutions and building a positive future.
And building on what you were just saying, actually, Xie, what are youth activists fighting for right now, both on the global scale and I'll get to you in a moment to ask the same question, Jerome. What are you fighting for yourself?
Well, the big picture is that for us, 1.5 degrees of warming, that limit that the IPCC report gave us, that the Paris Agreement gave us, is not just a random number. 1.5 degrees is about justice, because the communities most affected by sea level rise, by wildfires, are the communities that have historically been impacted by a system that has forgotten them. And so the global north, global south conversation, it's not about pitting two sides of the world against each other. It's about recognizing the historical injustices to then be able to walk on this path of meeting that goal. Because 1.5, we see it as this ambitious goal, but in reality, it should be seen as a limit. This year, we already saw what heat waves were doing. We saw the hottest year ever recorded. And so what we're fighting for is that rapid decarbonization across every single sector. And the youth movement, for example, I'm at University of Pennsylvania, and people at my school are saying, already signing agreements, I will not work for a fossil fuel company. I will not work for a company that doesn't have a plan for climate or sustainability. So the tides are turning, and what we also bring as the youth movement is that diversity of perspectives, because, for example, indigenous wisdom, indigenous values of reciprocity, of if I take, I must give back, and those type of things that have been missing from our global conversation are so, so important. So I think the youth movement is something unique. It has never happened before in history that people from all around the world are connected, organizing together, feeding off of each other's expertise, and then thinking of what do we build from here.
And clearly, your background coming from an Indigenous community makes that really meaningful to you. What are you personally fighting for?
I'm fighting for joy. I'm fighting for my kids to have a future where they don't have to be scared of a heat wave or sea level rise or moving away because your home was destroyed. And I think that is what we forget, that the climate crisis is violent. The climate crisis is something that will dramatically affect how children grow up. Our chemistry in our brain actually gets affected when you have this type of traumatic events happen to you. So what I want is to protect future generations. What I want is for my children to experience a world that I am proud of the legacy that we build. And I think if we come to the climate movement thinking not what we're upset about and what we're angry about, but what gives us hope for changing the world, that is what I want to bring to this space. And I think all of you here have that in you. So the question now is, how do we work together so that we're proud of the legacy that we bring to our children?
Well said. Jerome, how about you? What does this fight mean to you?
I want to thank you for that question, because I feel like when we talk about the climate crisis, it feels like something is very personal, because growing up as a young person, we kind of understand the history of when you're young, you're supposed to have this sense of hope and the sense of ambition and kind of anxiety about what the future can hold for you. And I think what we've seen is that because of the climate crisis, my generation has fallen into this valley of despair, in a sense. It's fallen into a sense of apathy, because we are fighting for the right to live. And we're fighting for the basic necessity of clean air, clean water, and understanding that profit is not the only thing we should be caring about. We should be caring about communities and families who are at the front lines of the climate crisis, but are being ignored by investment and being ignored by companies who are continuing to pollute in their backyards. I think when we think about what we're fighting for, we're fighting for a call for moral clarity, because especially in conferences like this, where businesses are trying to come to the table and figure out where they can make changes, we're thinking structurally. We're fighting for how do we make sure that companies understand that it's not just about growth, but about development. And thinking about, well, we can't put Band-Aids in the climate crisis. We have to think rooted. We have to think deeply within the structures that govern how we work and say, if we slightly change the packaging of our product and have greenwashing labels that change the way we market, that isn't enough. We're fighting for ways in which we center communities and have programs in which disadvantaged communities can take part in job creation programs, and empower young people through workforce development programs, and all of those things, that's what we're fighting for. And I think that's why we're continuing to see young people rise up, and that we, in 2019, had tens of millions of young people in the streets demanding the status quo is disrupted. And we're still here today to demand clear goals and aims for the government to end all fossil fuel subsidies, for corporations to keep pushing and to have more stronger year-over-year targets and intermediate ways of transparency in which communities can hold them accountable. That's what we're fighting for, is for people to understand that the time is now and that we're going to be here whether you like it or not.
I was going to ask what Shia and Jerome would prioritize if they were the head of sustainability at a big company like Google. But I think let's have Kate Brandt come out and we can discuss that together. Kate? Welcome back to the stage, Kate.
Thank you.
We are really excited to have a dialogue here. Kate, what would you, given the opportunity that we have here, would like to ask Shia and Jerome?
Yeah, thank you so much for including me in this conversation. It's so nice to meet you both, and thank you for all that you're doing. And I just have to say before I ask my question, I am such a huge supporter of the youth climate movement for many reasons. But one thing I want to share with you is I can't tell you how many senior executives, senior government leaders who have came to me in the last several years and said, Kate, I have to tell you, I didn't always really care about climate or pay attention to it, but my daughter, my son, my niece, my nephew came to me and started talking about what this means to them, what it means for their future, and now I'm ready and I'm listening and I want to know what I can do. So amongst the many things that you're enabling, that is a huge piece of it. So thank you. And my question for you, I think, is a really simple one, which is just for me, for other people from companies in the room, how do we better support you and how do we better engage?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because I feel like it's very rare that we kind of see companies kind of coming out here and having these discussions, especially on like how we have holistic collaboration in a sense. Yeah. I think one of the biggest ways that we can kind of support the work that we do for each other is to have spaces in which we can inform the work that you do. And that not just young people, but community organizations and people who can ground truth the data that we're talking about is really important, and having them not just in advisory councils, but on the ground with the people that are doing the work, creating these programs. And I think that's really important. I think a lot of it is also being seen and being heard in a way that is supporting the organizations that are pushing for change. Yeah. If you're kind of being activists within Google and kind of pushing them forward, it also is how do we keep pushing them from the outside? And that's by supporting these organizations, funding them, creating ways in which we can have programs that are collaborative in that sense. I think it's really deeper to have a conversation where we can have activists and corporations in the same room and say, hey, we're going to keep pushing from the outside, but you're going to have to push from the inside as well, because we're going to keep knocking down that door, but we got to have people like you that are kind of pushing so we can have those creative spaces in a sense.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
To that, I'll add that a little bit of a story, because I think I learned so much from this, which is during Climate Week in New York City, the World Economic Forum convened 10 activists and 10 CEOs together in a roundtable. And I had never been part of something like that, where we're not just the one youth invited to speak with the chief sustainability officer or the one youth who gets to speak to the company, it was really a session of listening to each other. And what we first said is, what does it look like, or why is it necessary to have youth activists in conversation with you? The first reason is because we are somebody who will challenge you. And a lot of for example, one of the CSOs asked me if I would have a young person, but not necessarily an activist. And I said, that's okay if that's what the company wants. But the question is, do you want somebody who is going to push you to see things that you hadn't seen before? And I think I had a big of a revelation when I understood that CSOs actually see themselves as activists within companies and see themselves as somebody who will push the company to do better. So it's a collaborative effort of then how do you get the perspectives of youth activists and the climate movement to senior officers, to open minds, and say, we are really at a point where the climate movement is exploding in a way where we're going to be coming from every single side. So what are companies going to do to be prepared for that? For example, the EU is banning greenwashing. There's a lot of international policy around rights of nature, around the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, around rights of future generations. So all of these things are going to be legal frameworks that are going to hold both governments and companies accountable. So if companies don't know what's coming, then it's just going to be a mess, really. So enhancing transparency, enhancing dialogue, because if there's no transparency, we don't know what to ask for, and we don't know how to measure success. So I think the key for me is having spaces, like Jerome said, for conversation, for constructive solutions, and also understanding that the pressure will be coming, so then we have to be ready for that. And it's just amazing when the conversation ended with the World Economic Forum, one of the CSOs said, I had never ever thought about having a conversation with a youth climate activist. It had never crossed my mind, and it has actually changed the way that I see my role at my company. Because a lot of the times when there's youth engagement, it is through a youth advisory board. But if there is one meeting a month or one meeting every 6 months, that is not going to be able to push something forward. So I think the key is to have a person within your company that their role is youth engagement. And their role is youth activism engagement. And in that way, you can have that ongoing conversation and ongoing dialogue.
Thank you. Great advice. I want to thank Jerome, Shia, and Kate. I hope this is just the beginning of a fruitful communication, collaboration, and thank you for being a part of it.
I want to just thank my colleagues again, Dylan Siegler, who is the SVP of Sustainability and also heads up our Green Biz conference that is in February in Phoenix, and also Heather Clancy, our editor-at-large. It's just such a talented team. I feel very honored to work with everyone here. And I also want to say thank you to the Jazz Mafia, who's been over here on the side playing music all 3 days. You guys are amazing. We have just one more talk today in this lineup of Keynote programs. After the Keynote program today, I encourage all of you to head over to get some lunch and join some roundtable discussions. We have different discussions that will be based on topics, so you can pick which ones you want to join. This afternoon, we'll have several more sessions, and we're also going to have more workshops this afternoon, which is something we haven't done in the past. Those will be the length of 2 sessions put together and an opportunity to get deeper into content. So I encourage you all to take a look at that as well. And then, of course, as we mentioned at the beginning of the program, we have our after dark party tonight. So I hope to see you all there ready to shake a tail feather. So I also want to acknowledge that we have some art activations that are around the venue that I hope everyone takes a look at. To me, it can be a little bit confusing to be in a place like this giant convention center, while talking about natural systems and all of these different things that feel so rooted in the ground and connected to the earth. And we have some things that I really think bring that here today. especially love the Zendarium. I don't know if you guys have checked that out yet, but it's like a room full of plants. It's this recharge room. It's truly exceptional. I've never seen anything like this at a conference before, so that's just down the hall at 233. And also, I want to encourage folks, if you know Shauna Rappaport, we have a spot where you can leave her notes and also leave her a message. There's a phone there where you can pick it up and leave a little voicemail, and those will all go to Shauna as well, who is not able to join us this year at Verge. So with that, I would love to welcome up our final speaker. Molly Kawahata is such an inspirational speaker, also just a climate veteran. And I, during the planning of this event, had the occasion of having a couple of calls with Molly in preparation for this, and I left every one of those calls feeling uplifted. And I recognize how much in this space it's easy to get caught into the negative, like this is heavy work that we're doing. And I love Molly's perspective that really is focused around uplift and hope. And I'm delighted to be able to bring it all to you today. So Molly, welcome to the stage.
I think a lot about pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. It sucks.
Alpinism is like a chess game. It's not just physical.
You don't try to climb something that's like literally impossible. You have to know that you could get to the top. In the climate movement, we need to do the same. When we can lead with hope, everybody can be a part of it. That's to take my meds. In high school, I started getting into student organizing. There was a guy running for office who was really inspiring to me, and his name was Barack Obama. While people were fighting for climate change in the streets, I started realizing that we also had to fight for climate change in people's minds. When you live with a mental illness, you think about your mind all the time.
What I started doing is like figuring out how do we leverage psychology and neuroscience to get people to be on board with climate. Fear, guilt doesn't make you act, it makes you sit back.
We have to really think about what climate frames we are using. Climate change is not the fault of everyday people. The fossil fuel industry is what we're up against. I want climate change to be a concept inextricably linked to hope and empowerment and opportunity, not despair and gloom. When you realize that we can clean up the air for everybody, that we can put people back to work, that we can address racial injustice, social injustice, economic injustice, when you know that's possible, and not only possible, it's like waiting for us, we're getting there, then it keeps you fighting another day.
Years ago, there was a guy I liked, but I couldn't pronounce his name. I learned about Barack Obama. Let's get the slide up because it makes more sense. I learned about Barack Obama on MySpace, and I referred to him for over a week as Barack Obama. Now, I wasn't a particularly hopeful person back then. I struggled quite a bit with my mental health. So it's interesting to actually look back and realize that Barack Obama's message of hope appealed to me and countless other cynical people. And I think there's a takeaway in that. Research actually shows that you don't have to be a hopeful person for a hopeful message to appeal to you. Now, years later, I find myself serving as a climate advisor at the Obama White House. And there's one night I'm at my desk. It's 3 a.m. Now, usually a lot of team members I had were at our offices then, but this one night, I'm alone. And I'm feeling really frustrated. because we're trying to do everything we can to move climate action forward, and we're facing tremendous obstruction from Congress. And then I have an epiphany. My theory of change starts to evolve in a moment, where we know that we can't solve the climate crisis without systemic change. And you can't get systemic change without electeds. And you can't get electeds until you get the people on board. And here was my realization. You can't expect to have the people on board until they feel something. And that last part, that people need to feel something in order to act, I realized that might be key. The idea that what we could do in the halls of the White House could come down to, by transitive property, a human feeling, was something I had never considered. I start looking into psychology research, and one thing is very clear. Fear, guilt, shame, which I had seen dominate the climate narrative for decades, is actually antithetical to human motivation and long-term action. It actually paralyzes people into not doing much. Now, also, there exists the science of hope, an emerging area of positive psychology backed by over 2,000 published research studies. Hope is extremely tied to motivation. In fact, if you have a goal, it's been shown, proven, to be one of the most efficient ways to realize it. So the question is, what can hope actually do? The research here is pretty profound. Hope is associated with everything from cancer patients living longer, to childhood trauma survivors having significantly better life outcomes, to a lower divorce rate among high-hope couples. In fact, the biggest predictor of longevity, one of them is how much hope you have. This means something, right? And so I started to realize that maybe there were some applications. Hope is specifically not a feeling or an emotion. It's also not a temperament. It's not like some people are born more hopeful than others. No, hope is a mindset. It's a tool, and therefore it can be learned, and therefore it can be spread. So hope gets misconstrued with a lot of other things. So I'm going to define it for you very clearly, how psychology defines it and how it's measured. Hope is specifically the belief that the future can be better and that you have the agency to make it better. Now, this is what actually differentiates hope from optimism. Optimism shows up in the research as the belief that the future will be better, period. It's this idea that good things happen to you, good things happen in the world, things work out in the end. Now, there's been quite a bit of pushback to climate optimism. And to be honest, I think I can understand where people are coming from sometimes. Climate optimism is associated with people feeling good, better about the future. But climate hope is associated with people working collectively to create that better future. Hope requires agency. That's what differentiates it from optimism. Now, in the climate space, we're working on a uniquely complex problem, and our workforce is facing a unique type of anxiety and at risk for a unique type of burnout. Hope actually has vast applications here. So I'm going to talk about 3 strategies for creating a more hopeful workforce on climate. And there are many others, so if you're interested in this, come talk to me after. I just can't fit them all in. All right. One thing we know is that when you increase the hope level of employees, all of these things happen. Retention, productivity, and job satisfaction, just as a start, increase. Now, I had been focused for a while on climate communications and storytelling, as well as like corporate climate strategy, and then I found myself in this space because of its potential to have big impact. Now, what are the building blocks of hope? It starts with an accurate appraisal of the problem. Anything that minimizes the problem or just says, look at the bright side, there are good things happening too, that's by definition not hope. It's looking straight at the problem. It's starting there. Now, it's comprised of 3 things. First, goals. Goals need to be feasible and desirable. Second, agency, willpower. It's your energy to take action. And the third is pathways, strategy. That's your roadmap for action. So strategy 1 for creating a more hopeful workforce in climate is empower individuals with a sense of control. The more people feel a sense of control over their work and lives, the higher their level of agency, the higher their hope level, and the likelier they are to be able to realize their goals. Consider goals, agency, and pathways your formula for spreading hope. And the amazing thing about this is when we talk about hope as a tool, you can actually look at any life outcome, professional outcome that you don't like through the lens of a hope framework and figure out what between goals, agency, and pathways is breaking down. It's usually one of them. And that changes the intervention or the solution you provide, and it can increase the likelihood that you will get the outcome you desire. Now, there's amazing research on people's bosses. Research actually shows that employees who have a boss that makes them feel hopeful are more innovative, productive. They're likelier to stay with an organization more than 2 years. They're more committed to their jobs and they work harder. And on the other side, employees who have a boss that does not make them feel hopeful are the counter on almost all those metrics. Now, I want to be clear, this is not talking about an employee's individual hope level. No. This is about whether or not their boss gives them hope and how that impacts them personally. Strategy 2 for creating a more hopeful workforce on climate is embodying hope inspires hope. It is hard to spread what you do not have. This is one of the most validated parts of the hope research. Now, at the White House, we wanted to understand what the most effective way to frame climate change was because we realized we actually weren't sure. My colleague Rohan Patel actually led this research. And we tested all of the different frames that are put out there. We found something really surprising. The most effective way to frame climate change was not through the lens of climate-related disasters, or national security, or the macroeconomy, or even the environment. The most effective way to frame climate change by far was through the lens of public health. Now, it was only a few years ago where I looked back and I realized that public health was the only hope frame we had tested. Because when you talk about climate change in terms of pollution, there's a counter, which is a land of clean air. And we were focused a lot on the process. What are we doing? What's happening? But we realized there was an opportunity to talk about where that was getting us. What was it going to look like to open your eyes in that world that we were creating together? And so we started writing it down with this hope-based climate narrative on public health. As we deploy more clean energy across the country, there will now be children who never have to know the pain and fear of an asthma attack. Parents who now get to be there to watch their children graduate, get married, whose lives would have otherwise been cut short from breathing pollution. We know that as we deploy more electric vehicles that are now coursing through the streets, communities who live near highways and have had to breathe traffic-related pollution have now been freed from the burden of a rising Alzheimer's rate. People now get to watch their parents grow old with minds clear and memories vivid. We know that this is the transformative power of what happens when we restore collectively people's right to clean air and an environment free of harm. It's the promised land. So, strategy 3 on creating a more hopeful workforce is show the promised land, tell them it's coming. Talk about it in terms of inevitability. And this is also relevant for whatever your organization's mission statement is. Talk about what it looks like once your mission statement has been realized. What's it feel like to live in that world? Now, the amazing thing about hope is that it spreads. It spreads across people and it spreads across domains. In fact, one of the most valuable resources we have within our organizations are hopeful employees because they come in and they spread it. You can probably attest to a personal experience with this, with someone you know, right? Somebody who's worked with. Maybe you've been that person. So the question becomes, what if? What if we can use the power of hope to change how people feel and to change how they show up to help solve collectively the greatest crisis of our time? We might find that in addition to the work we do today, helping build a more hopeful climate workforce alongside that might be some of the most important work of our career. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. That is the end of our Keynote program. I'd like to shout out our foundational sponsors once more, Hitachi, Deloitte, NextEra Energy. Thank you so much. And please enjoy the rest of the show. I'll see you back here tomorrow at 1:15 for the last day of Keynotes.
Everything we know, everything we love, might well be at risk. The time for action is now. Together, we can be champions for the Earth.
You just need to know where to look. Calyx Global's trusted ratings and insights help you navigate the carbon market with confidence. Learn more at calyxglobal.com.
Welcome everybody back to the Sidebar. I hope you all enjoyed those keynotes as much as I did. I gotta be honest, I got emotional with some of that. I mean, the messages there for me were so powerful and just really struck to the heart of my why, right? Why I'm here, why I'm a part of this. So I just feel that really fortified resolve, right? This kind of uniting feeling on the action we need and the reason we're doing it.
I so agree, and it's always a challenge when you're hearing in real time. You know, I was up there with Shia and Jerome, and they really did, I think, an astounding job of articulating what this fight is on a personal and a professional level. And we're all really invested in this. This isn't just a job.
Yeah, well, just that word, the fight. Right, this is really, you know, this idea of sacrifice zones, that quote for me, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's just this idea that we need to make sure the people that are impacted the most are not sometimes showing up to the conversation, are always center in and participating and helping lead the conversation. That's actually what a just transition looks like. And to hear that from chief sustainability officers, as well as from youth activists, to get them together and say, let's just stay linked up and united in this, we're hearing it live. I mean, we're here, and hopefully this is just continued, we'll take more of it.
We're really excited about the interviews we've got to come, so stick with us.
See you soon.
Hassle-free, hassle-free, affordable, and sustainable waste and recycling management. Every business knows they need it, but constantly dealing with unreliable service, unexpected fees, and unpredictable rate hikes? That's a mess you don't need. And that's exactly why Roadrunner has become the new standard in waste and recycling. We provide fully managed waste and recycling services enhanced by cutting-edge technology. First, we'll consolidate management of your waste operations, whether it's in one location or across your entire portfolio. And we'll leverage our trusted network of over 3,000 haulers and vendors to deliver dependable services nationwide. Next, we'll leverage our proprietary technology suite to monitor, collect accurate data, and analyze every aspect of your waste operations. The result? Better service, simplified, flexible billing, and landfill diversion opportunities that make sense for your business. And we'll do all this and more for less than you're paying for waste management and recycling services today. Let us accelerate your road toward affordable, reliable, and sustainable waste and recycling. Roadrunner. Modern waste and recycling.
Data is the currency of the climate-smart economy.
economy. In agriculture, that data begins with the farmer. At Trust in Food, that's where we begin to, by applying advanced data intelligence to understand how farmers think, feel, and undertake change.
Welcome back to the Sidebar. I'm Dylan and this is James, and we are here with Anu Khan. She is Deputy Director of Science and Innovation at Carbon 180. We're really excited to have her. So Anu, do we have the policies that we need in order to accelerate climate action? We've been hearing a lot about that on the main stage today. What are we doing to make sure that we have the right enabling factors in place?
I love that question so much. And first and foremost, thank you for having me and excited to join. So for those of you who might not know, Carbon 180 is a US federal policy organization focused exclusively on carbon removal. And so I think a lot about the enabling policies that we need to have the carbon management ecosystem that the IPCC, that the scientific consensus tells us we need. And I think in the US in the last couple of years, we've done a lot of work to get there. We have the Infrastructure Act, we have the Inflation Reduction Act, we have a lot of these pieces that are coming into play, and of course the CHIPS and Science Act as well. So you have these three big federal policies that are bringing to bear quite a bit of funding to accelerate the innovation ecosystem for climate. And there's still a lot more we need to do. We are in the early days of translating research into deployment, and there's going to be a lot of learning that comes with that. And then we need to keep iterating, keep building on that learning in order to get to large-scale commercial deployment of the size of other industries and other commodities. So I think we're on the right trajectory, but now we really have to ask ourselves, how do we sustain this? How do we get from the big infusion that we had with the Inflation Reduction Act to markets that work, regulations that are persistent over decades? Because this is not a, let's get everything done between now and 2030. This is work that needs to continue through 2050, 2070, and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. To shift from the policy to the technology, right? You mentioned deploying, right?
Yep.
Deploying at scale. I mean, what for you is the most exciting, ready to deploy technology right now in carbon capture?
Yeah, so in the carbon removal space, there's a lot of excitement around direct air capture right now. So the Department of Energy just announced the first round of awards for the Regional Direct Air Capture Hubs program, which is, the US government saying, like, we're gonna make this happen. We're gonna help build this, we're gonna provide support. And it's not just the two big hubs that have been announced. There's this range of different sizes of projects that's helping smaller scale developers, communities start to become familiar with this technology so that we can kind of build up to large scale deployment. So I get really excited about that. That's, we're putting steel in the ground, we're starting to build what this future is gonna look like. A lot more to do, but we're definitely on that road.
So direct air capture is kind of a snapshot of the now. When you look into the future of carbon removal, what's the vision? What's the sort of, we just heard from a speaker on the main stage who wanted to understand, like, what does the promised land look like for carbon removal?
Oh, I love that question. I think what it looks like is deployment that respects the needs of communities, that meets our global climate justice goals, that respects how much the global north has emitted and our responsibility to clean up those emissions, but does so in a way where projects are inherently local. They have to be built with the consent of communities. They have to be built with support. They have to be built in ways that benefit communities. So for me, the promised land, it's deploying a portfolio of solutions that gets us to gigaton scale carbon removal globally, but doing it in a way that communities feel really enthusiastic about, that creates good jobs, that creates economic opportunities, that generates co-benefits through biodiversity, agriculture, all sorts of things. So that's the dream.
Oh, I love that.
And I think we're on the path.
That's incredible. So we've only got about 30 seconds left. So if in 30 seconds you had my mom here, and my mom has never heard of carbon removal before, I'm not giving her enough credit, but let's just say, how would you very briefly just describe it to the uninitiated?
Absolutely. So I think most folks know that we have put a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. We have burned carbon, we put it in the atmosphere. Carbon removal is anything we do intentionally to take it back out. It is the only way to take it back out, and we have to take it back out.
I love that, and I hope my mom is actually tuned in so that she can get the benefit of that extremely clear definition. We have been so excited to have Anu Khan here from Carbon 180. Thank you so much for joining us, Anu.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming to Sidebar.
Energy is transformative. It brings your business to life. And the energy ecosystem is evolving. At Train, we transform the way you engage with energy.
If your business is aiming for net zero, you will need carbon removals. Forward-thinking companies have recognised the urgency and are engaging with us to act now. Start investing in your company's future by engaging with Drax. Action now doesn't just mean investing in your future. It means investing in everyone's.
Hello and welcome back to Sidebar. We are joined now by Amy Scotchless-Cole, the president of Trust in Food at Farm Journal. Amy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. And listen, you have a huge audience that you send out your messages to. I'd love to just hear a little bit about that circulation and also who you want to be reaching more of, who you're not reaching yet.
Sure. So Farm Journal is the largest agricultural communications media organization in the country. We reach just about every farmer in the United States. Yeah. And what we have seen is that farmers are learning and interested in opportunities for improving their sustainability performance. They hear about it from consumers, they hear about it from the companies that are buying from them. And so what we're really doing is figuring out how do we provide information out to our audiences, and then how do we get information back from those audiences to help bridge this connection, right? Less than 2% of America is now responsible for helping make sure that we all eat. And so we really see ourselves as bridging this divide. In terms of who we'd like to reach more of, my goodness, we reach farmers, but we'd really like to reach eaters too. And hear more from folks and help bridge this divide about what is it like? What is it like feeding the world's population? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities for climate smart agriculture?
I love that, and as an eater, I would definitely be interested in hearing from more farmers. So I think you found yourself a new audience member.
Awesome.
Now, Amy, I understand you use behavior science to inform your work. Tell me a little bit more about how that happens at Farm Journal.
Yeah, so one of the great things about being Farm Journal is that farmers have trusted us to help them navigate change, right? That may not seem like it, but the world of agriculture is changing so darn fast, and they rely on our journalism and our editors to help them figure out what that change means to them. In doing that, they're sharing a whole bunch of information with us about how they conduct their operations. And so what I can do then is look at the largest database in US agriculture about producers, how they're thinking, how they're feeling, how they're making decisions, what's in their way, what do they need. And then there's probably lots of folks in your audience that are like, gosh, I am looking to farmers to help me with my carbon footprint. I'm a food company, I'm an energy company, I'm an eater. How do I help that farmer make a change? And so what we see in our behavioral data is actually what do farmers need and want in order to take the next step in their regenerative agriculture journey.
Gosh, that is so interesting. I love how you're bringing that science into it. I want to come at another side now. This topic of food resilience, right? I mean, I don't want to just go kind of doom and gloom on that, but I'm curious, like, what does a failure in food resilience look like? Just help us understand that concept of it.
Yeah, well, I think that what we have to understand, and we saw this through the pandemic, is that our food system is relatively fragile, right? And it's fragile, and the system has been designed, look, we are the most productive, the most scaled, the most economic, the most efficient food system in the world ever, and it can have points of fragility. And so the opportunity is, how do we build climate resilience, economic resilience, social resilience into the fabric of our system by thinking about being more connected to nature and by helping producers think about what does it take to move my operation in that way.
Yeah. Just build off this on the eater side for me as well, right? Okay, that's a new audience we have. I think there's probably some eaters out there listening right now. What's the story that you would want to say to them? What kind of message would you share?
I think the message that I would share is, I understand everybody's trying to do the very right thing, and we're swimming in lots of information. The thing to know is probably every farmer is different, every part of the food system is different, and so it's not a one-stop shop, right? So the more that an eater gets to know what it's like for producers in their community, and there are food producers in every part of the country, right, and all over the world, get to know what it looks like, get to know what it feels like, understand the human being that is helping make sure that you meet your nutritional needs, and then understand, like, walk a mile in their shoes a little bit.
Yeah, I've heard that, kind of scary idea that some kids think, oh, this food comes from the supermarket, right? It just shows up here in plastic.
Brown cows make chocolate milk. That's the one that I've seen that has terrified me. Like, right, we are just so disconnected from our food system.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, this was really informative and interesting, and I hope all of you listening will check out Farm Journal. And thank you for joining us at Sidebar.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Our pleasure.
From decarbonization to cutting costs, to price stability, whatever your goal, wherever you are in your sustainability journey, we're the right partner to help make your goals a reality. End to end, every step of the way. Walk with us, and let's make it real. From decarbonization to cutting costs, to price stability, whatever your goal, wherever you are in your sustainability journey, we're the right partner to help make your goals a reality. End to end, every step of the way. Walk with us, and let's make it real.
Hello, back at Sidebar. We have Franny Lavar, and she's the Director of Sustainability and ESG at United Airlines. I want to just go big in our first question for you, Franny. What does the future of sustainable flight look like?
It's a great question, and it's certainly one I love to talk about. It's really what we're sort of focused on every day in our jobs. And I think when you get down to it, we're an airline. Our job is to fly planes. Our job is to fly people around the world. So it's really about what we're flying and what we're flying on. And certainly the biggest critical lever for our success in reaching our decarbonization goals is sustainable aviation fuel. United, much like other airlines across the industry, have committed to being net zero by 2050. And for us, a massive part of that is sustainable aviation fuel, both utilization of the feedstocks like fats, oils, and greases that are in production today, which are not nearly in the supply we need, and those future generations of SAF. It's also going to be things like alternative propulsion for maybe some of those shorter haul flights, things like electric aircraft, hydrogen-powered aircraft. But then it's really around sort of what are we doing in our ground operations? How are we looking holistically at our company to ensure that those support functions, those auxiliary functions, are also paying attention to our impact, and that we're engaging our customers in that. We're helping them understand some sophisticated topics like sustainable aviation fuel. like the things that we're doing, why we're trying to do it, why it's important.
I was reading about the Eco Skies Alliance.
Yes.
And would love just for you to share with the audience a bit about that and how corporations can get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a pleasure of mine to be able to support that program specifically. And so we launched it in 2021 with a number of corporate partners. The intent being we needed to get scrappy in COVID. Sustainable aviation fuel is 2 to 4 times as expensive as conventional jet fuel. And in COVID, when everybody's watching their pockets, we needed to figure out how to continue to advocate for the use of the fuel. And so we partnered with a number of corporate and cargo customers wherein they will pay the green premium for the sustainable aviation fuel, and in return, they're allocated Scope 3 reductions to draw down their business travel footprint. And so it's mutually beneficial. We're often working with companies that are like-minded, that have similar decarbonization goals, that are focused on looking for opportunities to further sustainable aviation fuel. It's been really successful. We've had about 40 customers now through 3 rounds, and we've seen year over year significant increase in the amount of SAF we've been able to produce.
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. Of course, United and other airlines rely on your passengers, your customers to succeed. And I'm curious, how should companies, perhaps those who are part of the Eco Skies Alliance and those who might be just outside of that circle, how should we as the flying public be thinking about our frequent flying? Should we be trying to reduce that given the emissions involved? Should we be sort of holding out this hope and trying to support SAF? How do we do that?
It's a great question, and there's no easy answer. I mean, I think for so many people, air travel in particular, is personal. It brings a connection. We all know what it was like during COVID when we missed that face-to-face time. This is different than being on the other side of a screen. There is always going to be a need for people to be together. It's also critical for a lot of companies' functions and for their business operations. And so certainly I don't think the answer is not flying. I think it's about thinking about how we can do it right. The other thing is that when we think about sustainability, we also think about this connection between people and planet. And we think about sort of the need for diversity of thought, for diversity of engagement. Flying can help bridge those gaps between people. It can really sort of move people towards that inclusion, that notion of understanding different cultures, seeing different landscapes you would not otherwise have exposure to. I think it's critical on a number of different levels. And so in that respect, we need to be thinking about how can we be responsible? How can we be aware of the impact that we are flying for those choices? United has put emissions in the booking pass so that people have that awareness, and also giving them an opportunity to contribute. We've seen over 100,000 people just in the few months we've had the contribution option open. So we see that there is a real interest from our customers to participate and engage.
It's so exciting as a flyer myself and inspiring to get to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
We've been with Franny Lavar from United Airlines.
Hitachi works to support everyone who cares about the planet. Like Mr. Rossi, who wants to use ticketless transportation that's both convenient and low in emissions.
Prenderò questa strada.
And Ms. Chang, who can invest in green projects through a digital platform that accurately assesses environmental impact.
I want to support.
The choices we make can change the future. Hitachi is creating a better society through digital and green technologies.
Climate change has put everything at risk. Resilient farming practices can help producers adapt to the stresses of climate change while actively fighting to combat its effects. At Regrow, we're working to make resilient farming possible on every acre around the globe.
If your business is aiming for net zero, you will need carbon removals. Forward-thinking companies have recognised the urgency and are engaging with us to act now. Start investing in your company's future by engaging with Drax. Action now doesn't just mean investing in your future. It means investing in everyone's.
When it comes to infrastructure sustainability, your goals are off in the distance. Where they begin is right here. Black & Veatch. You bring the what if. We map out what next.
Hello, and thank you again for joining us at Sidebar. We are here with Jim Shandilov, the Vice President of Originations at NextEra Energy Resources. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for letting me be here.
Jim, my understanding is that you are working on driving the energy transition. And my first question is just, are we doing it fast enough right now? Are we making the progress that we need to? How are you feeling about where you are in the journey?
I feel like we are at an amazing point in time. We're at an inflection point on the decarbonization opportunity. There are several macro trends driving this. It's technology, it's capital markets, it's government actions. Specifically, things like the Inflation Reduction Act that were passed last year give the longest, clearest runway to renewable energy development that the industry has ever seen. So it's really a path to develop an economically sustainable industry over time and help other sectors decarbonize.
What would you ask for people that aren't in the energy industry? Like, what can others do to be a part of the movement and the work you're doing?
Well, what we've seen is that organizations representing over 91% of global GDP have commitments to net zero goals. Mm-hmm. So we are working with customers to help them achieve those goals and help craft their journey, help craft the path along their journey. We find that the hardest thing to do is getting started. And you don't need a decarbonization plan on day one. You really need to understand that there are several simple steps to get started. We like to call them the 4 M's. It's measure, manage, mitigate, and minimize. Measuring is all about establishing a baseline, understanding what your Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions are, and secondly, managing that. Consistently collecting additional data, understanding what kind of progress you're making along that path. Mobilizing the organization to come up with initiatives to manage the issues. Mitigate, come up with plans for the company, both short and long term, for our customers on how they can achieve those decarbonization targets. And lastly, minimize. How do they minimize their long-term risk? How do they minimize ultimately their costs of their carbon footprint?
That's great.
It's so easy to remember. I love these 4 M's. You at NextEra offer resources to your customers to try and make the energy transition more frictionless. Why do these clean energy solutions need to be customized?
So each sector is unique. We find, for example, that the most carbon-intensive industries, such as heavy industries, see the greatest amount of challenges, and you need a custom solution for each one. For example, when we talk about heavy industries, we're talking about steel production, chemicals, refineries, cement. They're heavy energy users, and the energy mix isn't always clean. So we work with our customers to come up with really a mix of solutions. And it's, on the one hand, you could have off-site power purchase agreements, which is something that our NextEra Energy Resources is the leader in the industry of. So you can have a mix of power purchase agreements, on-site behind-the-meter solar, energy efficiency, boiler replacements from gas to electric, fleet electrification, energy efficiency, a variety of potential moving levers and parts that allow a company to reach its decarbonization goals.
That's great. Jim, if I was to give you this invisible magic wand I have, and you could get rid of one of the barriers to all of this work, what do you want to get out of the way right now? What's holding us back?
What we are working very diligently on is educating customers. We have traditionally we've worked with utility companies. We develop wind projects, solar projects, battery energy storage projects, and work with utilities to help them decarbonize. But right now we're working very diligently on decarbonizing the commercial and industrial sector, which is what this conference is all about. So we're doing a lot of education out there, helping them understand how they can navigate these challenges. So I think education is probably the biggest barrier, and we're constantly working toward that. I'll give one example. We worked with a company called Nucor Corporation, which is a US-based steel manufacturer. We recently entered into a transaction with them to sell them solar energy from a new project that will be built in the state of Kentucky. So that helps Nucor with its Scope 2 emissions. At the same time, we're buying steel from that factory to use in our solar projects.
It's
That's great.
super exciting, and we actually have Nucor speaking at our upcoming event in February, so
Okay.
I will make sure to ask them about that. I'm curious, in the few seconds we have left, just what gives you hope?
What gives us hope is the willingness of customers to look at these solutions and the fact that so many of them have set net zero targets. So for NextEra, I'll say that we are the world's largest generator of energy from the wind and sun. We're a world leader in battery storage, and we're also the driving force in the green hydrogen economy, developing that economy. So we want to take our energy expertise, take our significant development pipeline that's national. We own and operate 27,000 megawatts of electric generation in the US, in 40 states in Canada. So we want to take that expertise and apply it to help our customers along their decarbonization journey.
Thank you for your leadership, and thanks for joining us at Sidebar. We've been with you.
Thank you.
Electrada's 360 Charging as a Service is your fleet's complete electric fuel solution. We cover the design, build, management, and support of your fleet-tailored EV charging infrastructure with the potential to generate up to 70% in lifetime savings compared to doing it yourself. We cover 100% of your fleet's EV charging infrastructure and equipment costs. And with predictable pricing, you are protected from energy price volatility. Electrada's 360 Charging as a Service simplifies your transition to an electric fleet, a complete solution in every sense of the word. Learn more about how to energize your fleet with Electrada's 360 Charging as a Service.
More companies than ever are making bold sustainability commitments, but less than 30% are on track to achieve them. Many organizations have the ambition, but lack the capabilities, tools, and capital to transform at speed and scale. NG Impact accelerates the sustainability transformation for corporations, cities, and governments around the world. Accelerate your sustainability transformation right now for tomorrow.
And that's a wrap for today's Sidebar, coming to you live from the Keynote stage here at Verge 23. And unfortunately, it also means we're going to be saying adieu to James, who will not be joining us tomorrow. Tomorrow, I will be here with my colleague John Davies from Green Biz Group. James, it's been such a joy to be here with you at the Sidebar. What messages do you have for our audience to take away?
Look, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining and listening and participating. I hope that you can all join us in person maybe at some point. These messages you're hearing are, for me, just even more powerful when you're in the room. And the ability to, and I put this out as a challenge, as an ask, to keep the conversation going. Anything you heard, anything you learned about, right? Chat with a friend, spread the good word. It was shared earlier in some of the keynotes that this is about everybody. We need all the skill sets involved. This is not just some people's job, right? This is something that we're all a part of. So again, I'm just grateful. This has been a blast. I have loved doing this with you. Any final reflections for you, Dylan?
I am so with you on this, James. As our good friend of Green Biz, Molly Wood, puts it, everybody in the pool. We need everyone here working on this. We need to keep those lines of communication well-oiled. That's a mixed analogy, but you get what I'm saying. We need to keep collaborating. And so I think what we've seen today is that all of the folks on this stage and all of the folks at Green Biz and all of the thousands that have been in the room and joining us on the live stream are here for that challenge. And I'm here for it too.
Jump in the pool. The water's warm. Join us. It's a wonderful future we're creating.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining Sidebar. See you tomorrow.